So you're in a queue in Sydney, Australia, waiting to buy a Crumbl cookie. Crumbl cookie currently isn't available outside of the US, but it seems that Australia is the lucky place to be able to get Crumbl cookies. So it's the first place outside America to get Crumbl cookies. You see the price of the cookies, they're $17, but you're like, well, it's Crumbl, these cookies, they're amazing, it's worth the money. You buy the cookie's a little bit stale, and you're like, what is this? And then you find out that actually this isn't an actual Crumbl cookie event. Welcome back to Cake Crumbs. I'm reviving Cake Crumbs. Cake Crumbs was a series that I started earlier this year when I was talking about news, events and controversies in the food industry, trying to focus on the sweet side of the sweet industry. But when I saw this whole Sydney Crumbl cookie drama all over my TikTok, I thought I had to do a video about it, because what in the audacity? Or is it just brilliant marketing? So let's get into the story. What is Crumbl Cookie? Crumbl Cookie is a brand of cookies that you can only currently get in America. But what makes Crumbl cookies so viral and so supposedly amazing? From what I've heard, the cookies themselves are what I've heard is that they're made out of cake batter. I don't know how true that is. But the kind of texture of the cookie is kind of sort of cake-like texture, and have all these different flavors, and a lot of them are topped with frosting. The flavors change every week, and there are people on TikTok who their accounts are dedicated to trying the new flavors of Crumbl every single week, and these videos get thousands and thousands of views. Now, what I've seen with Crumbl cookies is that you either really like them or you don't like them at all. There's some people that just rave about them. They're so amazing, the taste, the texture, all the different flavors. And then the other side I've seen is people who say that they're undercooked, they're very sweet. I've actually seen some TikToks of people biting into cookies, and they to me, they look undercooked. So it's very like, love it, love it, love it, or don't love it, love it, love it. But it's got to the point where there's a lot of bakeries around the world trying to replicate Crumbl cookies because of how popular it is. I've seen quite a lot of bakeries here in the UK saying, these are the Crumbl-like cookies, you can buy them here, you don't have to wait for them to eventually come over to the UK. I mean, they may never come over to the UK, they may never open a branch here in the UK. So there's a lot of bakeries sort of hopping on the kind of, these cookies are just like Crumbl cookies. So it's like, it's crazy. I haven't obviously tried them because I haven't been to America recently, but I haven't also tried the dupe, because for me, I would rather try the original before I tried the dupe. But maybe if I know somebody who goes to America, they can maybe bring me back some cookies. But let's get into the story of this Sydney Crumbl cookie pop-up and like what really happened. On the 29th of September, there was a Crumbl cookie pop-up in North Bondi, Sydney, Australia. Now, most people assumed, as I probably would, that this was an official Crumbl cookie pop-up. There was an Instagram and there was a TikTok titled Crumbl, I think Crumbl Sydney? Yeah, Crumbl Sydney. So it was assumed that, okay, Crumbl cookie are starting to go into different territories. So it was announced on this Instagram and TikTok, and suddenly there was this queue for this pop-up, and the cost of the cookies was $17.50 Australian dollars, which works out to 12 US dollars. Now, apparently, Crumbl cookie, if you're in America, you go and buy a Crumbl cookie, they're $5 to $6 each. So the price that people were paying in Australia was like double, more than double. And what's even crazier is that they had, I can't remember how many flavors they had, maybe 5 or 6 flavors. There were some people who spent $150 on 10 cookies. And whatever you say, whether you like Crumbl or not, I suppose it just shows the power the power of Crumbl, the fact that people were willing to spend $17.50 on one cookie. But as it turned out, this wasn't a Crumbl Cookie event. It turned out there was a group of people who, depending what story you believe, flew to Hawaii, bought a whole load of cookies, I think up to 1,000 Crumbl cookies, brought them back, and then set up this pop-up. And a lot of people were like, what? So this is an actual Crumbl Cookie event. Now what they're saying is that on their Instagram and their TikTok page that they launched, they actually put that this wasn't an official Crumbl Cookie event, but apparently that wasn't true. What's quite interesting is that in terms of what the cookies actually tasted like, most people said the cookies were stale. Now, this all depends on when they actually, how long ago they got the cookies before the pop-up. Crumbl changed their flavors, as I said, every single week. So when you look at the flavors that were available at this pop-up, you can kind of tell how old these cookies were. A lot of people were kind of like, how did they manage to bring back these cookies through the border? Because Australian border controls are very strict. And people were like, how did they manage to bring them back over through the border? But if they did it properly and they had the right paperwork, like import paperwork, you know, yes, we're going to go and buy these cookies and bring it back. If they had the right paperwork, there's no, I presume there's no problem with it. So it wouldn't have been an issue. But I think the main issue was the fact that they were stale. So I'm laughing at this. So you're paying $70 for a stale cookie. They were already a week old at that pop-up, which people didn't know. People didn't know. I mean, I don't know. It's just really crazy. Now, there's been various TikToks made about the whole kind of scandal about this. Crumbl itself haven't really said much, because technically they could probably sue this group of people for like trademark infringement, copyright infringement, but they're probably looking at the free publicity, because the amount of TikToks that have been made about this, and these TikToks have had so many views, they're looking at the free publicity of this. So whether they're going to actually sue these people or not, I don't know. Another theory that I've seen is that actually they didn't fly to America to buy these cookies, but they made them here and then just put them in Crumbl cookie boxes. Because if you see the boxes at this pop-up, it had the Crumbl Cookie logo on it, so you would assume that it's the actual Crumbl Cookie. So for me, isn't that an infringement of trademark right there anyway? But I think this story is gonna run and run for a little bit anyway. Crumbl Sydney, after the controversy, Crumbl Sydney came out with a statement. They said they flew to America, they imported the cookies, they showed the receipts of how much they paid for the cookies, they showed the paperwork that they had to fill in to bring the cookies back into the country. They broke down all the costs. They say they didn't actually make much of the profit. The reason they did it is because they're great Crumbl Cookie fans and they just wanted to kind of spread the love of Crumbl Cookies. And I'm like, you must have a lot of kind of spare money to be able to do this, because it wasn't, from the figures that I saw, it wasn't cheap to do all of that. And I'm like, what is the end game here? Was it just like you were just born and thought, okay, let's just go to America, buy these cookies, bring them back and just send them at the pop-up? I don't know what the end game was. But what is my take on it? Crumbl are not losing out, because their name has been sort of everywhere this week in terms of like the sweet food industry. This group of people, as it turns out, because I've been looking at further TikToks, it was two boys, an 18-year-old and a 21-year-old. I mean, are these kind of future entrepreneurs? Like, are we going to see in 5 years' time that they're going to come at something and it's like, oh gosh, do you remember they were the ones that set up the fake Crumbl Cookie pop-up? So is it, you know, is this the start of the entrepreneurial journey? And did they actually do anything wrong? I mean, yes, they did. They did. It seems misrepresent Crumbl Cookie, but this all ties down to people, the fear of missing out, because people were willing, because in the queue, they were in the queue, and there was somebody going along showing the cookies that are available, how much it was. So at that point, you could have been like, I'm not paying $17.50 for a cookie. But people stayed in the queue and they did. And I'm like, you bought those cookies for $17.50 each. And then you kind of have the audacity to be moaning about the fact that, oh my God, they were $17. Nobody forced you to buy those cookies. But I really think it's the fear of missing out. And people are like, oh my gosh, Crumbl are here. I don't want to miss out on it. I don't want to miss out on being one of the first ones to buy a Crumbl cookie in Australia, which is why people did spend that amount of money on cookies, on, as it turned out, very disappointing cookies that were stale. So it's quite interesting about this whole fear of missing out. But anyway, let me know. I don't know if any of you here watching the video have seen this whole Crumbl cookie drama. But if you have, let me know what your thoughts are on it. And yes, the the Cake Crumbs series is coming back. I don't know how often I'm going to do it, but whenever I feel there's something I need to talk about in the sweet food industry, I will be here. There's actually two more video ideas that I've got that will be coming up soon. Until next time, cake lovers.